A major portion of Jonestown was destroyed in urban renewal, and a major just about all of Baltimore town was destroyed in the big fire of 1904. So that Fels Point has survived as the only relic from that period. What Fels Point has is its original waterfront, original street pattern, and its fabric of 18th and 19th century buildings. And that should be honored, respected, preserved. You can't replace it. You can build another high-rise, but you can't replace the historic district. It's just very valuable, very delicate, very fragile, and extremely important to our cultural heritage.
Fels Point was quite attractive to developers, but everybody wanted to push it just a little bit far for their own project, and you do that cumulatively, and you have just pressure for overdevelopment. If they all happened, then you'd have a whole lot of problem in Fels Point with traffic and parking, and you would kill the goose.
One of the things that we did in Fels Point in the 70s, 80s, and 90s is we learned to fight for the things that we believed in, and we learned to pull together to do it. Fels Point is the kind of place that's wide open to exploitation, political exploitation. There was a time when every developer that wandered into town with an expensive suit was promised a piece of Fels Point by the city administration. They never met a developer they didn't like. Some of these guys were absolute con men, and they would come in with the most outlandish schemes that took no interest whatsoever in the well-being of the people who lived in Fels Point.
I would agree that the city in the past has suffered from a sense of desperation, perhaps, about the need for investment, so that anybody that came along with a plan and a promise to do something, the city, perhaps more so than it should, was kind of a reactionary kind of position where what can we do to make it happen, rather than thinking big picture and kind of highest best use and what's in the larger view best interest of the community and the city as a whole.
Property values rose so significantly in a very short period of time. People could realize a very great windfall in selling their property. The economics really changed the class structure in the Fels Point area to young urban professionals moving in, and families that had lived in the area for 1, 2, maybe even 3 generations moving out to less expensive neighborhoods, and neighborhoods that they were probably more comfortable being in. It was a real change in character for the area.
Life is a constant battle down here. The community has been at hearings for the last, I think we started in 1999 when the developers began to ask for variances, and we figured out we've been in something like 300 meetings and hearings trying to get the reasonable density and height restrictions on the new development. Constellation came to a community meeting on a Wednesday or Thursday and said that if the community would go along with this exchange of property, that they would not demolish the George Wells House and the London Coffee House. So everybody went along with it. And on Friday, PJ's walking his dog over on that land there, and the dog ran behind the properties, and there were 2 enormous signs, big red signs, posted on the buildings that they would be demolished in 48 hours. And when we called Constellation, they said, oh, that wasn't them, that the buildings were in such poor condition, the city decided to condemn them. So we ran around all weekend getting the condemnation notices lifted, and then we were given a very short period of time to purchase the buildings and stabilize them.
Now, Martin O'Malley said this. He said, You love it in Fels Point. Do you really think it's fair to say, okay, now we're here and we're closing the door and no one else can come in? And we said, no, of course not. We're just saying that we don't want to warehouse people here just so they can say they live in Fels Point.
It's 2.5 miles from Harbor Place by water to Fort McHenry. The average width of that body of water might be 350 to 400 yards. That isn't very much water. It doesn't take long to fill it up. And we have idiot developers who are at one and the same time eating their seed corn because they want to put barges on the harbor to do this and to do that.
Some of the marinas are going way out into the water.
Yes.
And all of them haven't come to light yet because less than 10% of the proposed development has actually taken place.
Fels Point has, over the years, followed a pattern you see in other cities. There's some funky old neighborhood, which is inexpensive. And so artists move in because one can afford the space needed. And artists start to attract again, a faux hip crowd, weekend estates, and eventually some of them decide to start moving in, prices go up, lofts get renovated, buildings get fancified, and artists find another old neighborhood. And what's left behind becomes an upscale, gentrified, kind of updated, romanticized past.
I couldn't afford to live in Fels Point now, not where I lived. And I wanted to live on the water. I've lived on the water all my life. And that's what I do. That's where my roots are, that's where my background is. I've been a sailor and a dock worker all my life.
Get to borrow it. It becomes yours for a while, but not forever, because it's got to belong to other people. So you have to let it go.